Hello, Chainsaw Valkyrie here, your Appalachian princess, coming to you once again with the next to last chapter of Tales from the Holler. Tonight's story is full of Christmas magic and holiday fear, so gather round, ghoulies and ghosts, for the vapor. Strange things occur in these hills and these hollers. Some sound peculiar and real hard to swallow, like Cletus McSween, our redneck as Dracula. Folks around here simply call him Tabacula, or Murray the Wolf, who once was a man, or old Frank and Dottie, who stalked our good land, or Stitches, the Twitches, or old Granny Ferris, the queen of the witches, the devil's own heiress, or the Halloween killer who always comes back, the undying fiend who is known as Mad Jack. Life on this mountain gets continually worse. I think we're bedeviled and hexed with a curse. Oh, excuse me, I am sorry for that. It must be getting close to the witching hour. I am dead tired. I and 6 friends have alone told the tales of big hairy monsters and things that have scales. We've told about things pieced together from bodies. We've told of the zombies seen by one Sheila Dottie. We've told of the creatures from old Brogy Holler near the marshy mud pit where the boar go to waller. But the stories we tell are discounted as fiction because they are told in our mountain-type diction. We tell them to warn you of the foul evil beasties who come out at night when they're hungry and feasty. We are writing these things in a chronicle journal, a record of all these beasties and infernals. I will now put my pen to this most sacred paper and write what I know of the foul evil vapor. It silently came that December evening, and left many dead, others wounded and grieving. But let me back up and recount the whole story, and all the events in their unvarnished glory, that led to the reason for all of the killing. It'll take a few moments, if you folks are all willing. 100 years passed on Christmas Eve day, beneath snowy skies that were bitter and gray. The men who were working the Wild Pocket mine were starting to work at 9:15. This Christmas Eve shift had been forced by the boss, who would not allow just a single day's loss. He said they must work 10 or more hours. The town needed coal as the source of their power. So into the mine, you ungrateful lot, he shouted with anger and rage that was hot. The men went to work and the boss went to town, leaving those miners alone 'neath the ground. The boss was invited to the town's Christmas party, which started at 5 and he couldn't be tardy. He went home and bathed and he dressed like a dandy. He gathered some gifts and a box full of candy. He had a hot date with Eliza Jane Mickle, and if he should be late, she would be very fickle. They showed up at 5, or so it was noted, about the same time that the mine shaft exploded. A layer of coal dust had somehow ignited because of a candle that someone had lighted. A man from the camp ran fast into town to tell of the plight of the men in the ground. He went to the site of the Christmas Eve party, the one that was thrown by Elmer T. Hardy. He begged the townspeople and the boss men to come, but no one would help him, not one single one. It's too dark to see, we will come at first light. We can't do a thing for the men there tonight. The party went on. There was dancing and mirth, while mining men died buried deep in the earth. They survived the explosion, but were all suffocated by the gaseous black damp, or so it's related. Black damp is a poisonous and noxious type gas when a mine has endured an explosive type blast. 32 men were sealed in their graves because no one would help on that Christmas Eve day. One of the men who was left there to perish was a father of 2 named Zachary Ferris. Zach was the father of the queen of the witches, the hag who had summoned the dead and the twitches. The young Ferris sisters blamed the town for their loss, and they swore that the people would pay a great cost. Both pledged themselves to the darkest of arts, as malice and evil took root in their hearts. And now we come back to this most recent year, and I'll tell you my tale. That's the reason I'm here. Goodness gracious, people, what am I to do? The story began Christmas Eve about dark, in a deep wooded place that is now a state park. At the side of the former wild pocket coal mine, ghostly voices were heard, as were low moaning whines. Then a misty black vapor seeped out of the shaft, like it had been summoned by the darkest witchcraft. The vapor rolled out in large murky waves, and it had a foul stench like a fresh open grave. It covered the town and it covered the mountain. It covered Point Park and the Wishing Well fountain. It covered the fields full of freshly fell snow, and the vaporous mist had an ominous glow. It rolled into town like a billowing cloud, down to Main Street where a gathering crowd was throwing a switch to light up the town tree to start the festivities this cold Christmas Eve. A feller named Nathan was skipping and capered and was quickly engulfed by the foul-smelling vapor. Inside the mist there were shadowy forms, wispy black figures that defied all the norms. The shapes were like men wearing oddly styled clothes, and we knew who they were, or at least we supposed. It was all the dead miners who were killed in the blast in the Wild Pocket Mine 100 years past. They carried old tools like axes and picks, which they used to cut off a man's getaway sticks. The shapes in the fog killed all that they met. They even beheaded the local town vet. One of the figures with the large mining pit gave Eddie Blevins about 59 licks. Then one with a hammer killed a lady named Mavis, while two that had axes chopped apart Sarah Davis. The dark silhouettes in that nebulous gloom searched an old house, and they went room to room, spilling the blood of all that they found, and leaving men's bodies strewn there on the ground. They strung an old man up with blue Christmas lights, as a radio played the song Silent Night. The figures that moved in that fog all aglow left not a print in the new fallen snow. People were fleeing these black apparitions who stalked through the night in that glowing emission. They killed without mercy. They murdered. They hacked. They invaded the town in an all-out attack. People were dead in their homes in the streets. They took Kelly Sneed and they chopped off her feet. A snowman was found that had small human arms, and the lady that found it was filled with alarm. She ran away screaming, "They've killed everybody!" as she almost collided with the sweet Catherine Dottie. One of the shapes tried to take Catherine's head, and she thought she was probably as good as dead. But at the last moment, a new shape emerged to rescue sweet Catherine from the murderous purge. A man with a cape and a deeply charred head. A man that sweet Catherine had long supposed dead. It was Eric the Phantom, the killer at Anglers, the one who had been the notorious mangler, here to defend the sweet Catherine's life, armed with a hatchet and a long butcher knife. "Run," he told Catherine, as he held them at bay, and he stayed there to fight on that Christmas Eve day. The strange murky vapor was moving and flowing as the town's body count kept rising and growing. The vaporous killers attacked homes and houses and murdered the men, and they chopped up their spouses. They busted out windows and broke down their doors. They invaded shops and they ramshackled stores. They broke into the home of old Bobby Baker, and they chopped him to death near some red wrapping paper. With a brutal ambition they butchered that feller, 'neath the gleam of the tree, which glowed blue and yeller. He was the last of the kin of that mining shaft boss, who sent those men down and had caused their great loss. The miners were raised up to seek out revenge, and with his gory death, they were finally avenged. And as quick as it came, the vapor retracted, and emergency efforts were quickly enacted to rescue and save all those who survived, and as many as possible could be revived, and to clean up the bodies laying dead in the street, and the arms and the legs, and the hands and the feet. Sweet Catherine was found alive and quite well, as lovely as ever, this sweet southern belle. She said she was rescued by the bass angler killer who worked with her once, selling red garden tillers. But no trace of him was ever detected. She imagined it all, several people suspected. That's how it happened that Christmas Eve day, beneath snowy skies that were bitter and gray. The miners arose from the wild pocket mine to seek out revenge as their hearts were inclined. I hope they are finally resting in peace, and their thirsting for blood has finally ceased. But I fear that we may see the miners once more, and there comes spreading bloodshed and murder and gore. So stay away then if you're faintish of heart from the wild pocket mine at the local state park. Beware if you see a strange glowing mist, in case they've come back for some evil plot twist. Take heed to this warning I put down on paper, and always beware of the foul-smelling vapor. Thanks so much for listening. Follow us on Facebook and YouTube. Stay creepy.